In this lab, we need to put code in two locations. In the gameboard.py file, we have the initialize function, where we're going to draw the background of each board. And in the main.py, we're going to add the titles U and them above each one of the boards. So when we start the lab, we see two empty game boards here. We only have to draw artwork in one location because these two boards are the same class, and so anything we draw in the class will be duplicated because we have two of the same objects. So let's start in the game board file, and the first thing we want to do is draw the yellow backgrounds for the column and row labels. So we'll do that with the drawRect function. And we're going to place that rectangle on the game board surface, which is called the image. We'll use the color file to be consistent here, so the header color. Feel free to edit that if you like. And then the rectangle is going to be anchored in the top left point at the 0, 0, so the top left of the game board. And then it's going to be as wide as the game board and as tall as a block. So that's the y step variable. So let's see what that looks like. Great. We'll do something similar for the row labels, the row header. Another rectangle, also on the game board surface, also using the header color, also anchored at XY00, so in the top left corner. But now the width will be one block, and the height will be the entire game board. Let's try that. Great. So for the next task here, we need to draw a lot of lines, 10 lines, a lot of row labels, actually 10 of them, and a lot of column labels, also 10. So we can actually do all of this together in a single for loop here that will go through 10 times. So let's set that up. For I in range, and n blocks is defined up here to be 11, and so we'll go through the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, which is 10 different values. All right, so let's begin with just drawing the lines. We'll use the drawLine function from Pygame. We'll put it on the game board, and we'll use the foreground color. Now, lines are defined as a starting point to an end point. So the start point of our line, let's try this out. So how does this work? Well, these are all vertical lines. Each line starts at y equals 0 and goes down to y equals height. We can see that here. The start point in the y direction is 0 all the way to height. Now the x start location and the x end location for each line are the same. We see that both the start and end point have the same x location. That x location changes for each line. As we go through this loop, I increases starting at 1 to 2, 3 to 4, and x step is the size of a block. So the first line is drawn at location 30, and then a vertical line at 60, 90, 120, etc. because there is a product here, multiplying by I. We can do the same trick to draw a bunch of horizontal lines. Here, we'll just flip the order. The x's will span the range, 0 to, and then we go ahead and do the other x, self.width, but the y's will change on each iteration, starting at and going to the same y value because it's a horizontal line. Oh, let's make sure. Again, if you see, if you see a problem like this, let's see if we can figure out where that came from. That is the use of an addition here rather than a multiplication. So that would mean that the first point is at line 30, then 31, 32, 33. We want 30 to 60 to 90 to 120, so that's going to be a multiplication term here. All right, looks a lot better. Next, let's put in the column labels 0 through 9. So these are text objects. I'll use the text utility to create the graphic. Text equals, and I'll use a trick here. I actually already have a number going from 1 up to 11. I really want the number 0 through 9. So I can use a string function on I minus 1 to get the letter 0, the letter 1, the letter 2, etc. I want to use a font size 24 and the foreground color. Now I need to place this on the game board at an XY location. The center of the target block I can find using the following. And then I can do the blit operation, blitting onto my image surface. The target is the text object, and the location that I want to blit it to is x comma y. Let's see what this looks like. We do have the text, but they're not in the right location. Why is that? Well, my xy, that computation, gives me the center of each one of these blocks. But the blit operation requires me to give the upper left coordinate in the source. So I've put the upper left coordinate of this 0 in the middle. What I want to do is actually put the middle of 0 in the middle of this block. To do that, I need to shift the 0 left and move the 0 up. By how much? Well, I need to move the 0 left by half its width. And I need to move the 0 up by half its height. By half the height of the 0, and by half the width of the 0. To do that, I can use the following. To move to the left, I need to subtract off of the x, and I want to go back half the width of the text. To move up, I need to subtract, and I want to go up by half of the height. And when I do that, notice that my text is actually centered quite nicely. Let's do the same for the row labels. I will create the text. Now to get these letters, I'll use another trick. The string library has an array of uppercase letters, so I can index into that. Arrays are 0 based, and so the capital A is actually in location 0, so I'm going to say I minus 1 here. And this will give me A through J as I go through the array. And font size of 24, and the foreground color. Now my x and y coordinates are computed in a similar way, just flipping which one is constant and which one is incrementing with a loop. So let me look at this where I've compensated the y, but I haven't compensated the x. Let's make sure we understand this again. So I'll leave the x off-centered, and the y is going to be properly centered. And I'll blit it on at that xy location. Okay, so the vertical alignment is correct, but the horizontal alignment is off. I need to shift each one of these back by half the width of the letter, and that will center the letter in the block. So to do that, I simply move to the left, which is a subtraction operation. Perfect. Okay, the last thing I need to do in this function is to draw the border around the game board. Now I could do that with a set of 4 line commands, but I can also simply draw a rectangle that is not filled in. So pygame.draw rect here. I want to put it on the game board. Use the foreground color. And now the rectangle I want to draw is defined as follows. The top left corner is 0, 0, but I want to go all the way across and all the way down. And I don't want this filled in. If I simply use the following, notice that I've put in a black rectangle that masks my entire board. That's really not what I want. So I'm going to make the line width set to 1 here, and so it will be just a thin edge. Okay, so that's everything you need to do in the game board function. Now when we go back to main.py, we're going to be doing the very similar set of drawing commands, but I want to use some of the built-in Pygame tools to do this in a little easier manner. So here we've centered the text manually. We can actually use some of the Pygame rectangle functions here to make this simpler. So we need to add these titles. Of course, to create the title U, we'll use the same utility function, text. And capital U. As usual, 24 font size, and the foreground color. Now, to place this on the screen, I could do some math or just simply trial and error to center it. But what I really would like to do is simply align U above the U game above my game board. So what I can do is get a rectangle that describes the location of this text. The width and height of this rectangle are defined by the font that I've chosen, and the XY anchor point is 0, 0. I can move the XY anchor point around, but I can do that by referencing the center of the rectangle. So let's look at this line of code. r.center x, the center of this new rectangle, I would like to be the same as the center of my board dot rect center x. So my board is a surface, which is described by a rectangle, and I can get the center of that. And so by moving the center of this bounding box, that actually also changes its top left coordinate. I'll also want to change its center y, but I don't want it to be in the middle of the board. Of course, that would cover up any ships I have. I want it to be in the middle of the margin. Right? And then I can do the blit operation. And now the blit operation takes not a XY coordinate, but a rectangle, and that the anchor point of that rectangle is used as the blit target. So let's see how that looks. Great, there's U. And notice that the code is a lot easier to read, and also dynamic in the sense that if I change the location of my board on the screen, the U will follow it. So let's do the same thing for the them. Size 24, foreground color. We'll get its bounding box. And then we're going to move that bounding box around to center it above that board, their board. and the y value will be the same. Now I'll do the blend operation. And that's it.